What's up, guys? Welcome to the 11th episode of Football Over Family. My name is Gavin, and this is Colin, and we're bringing you a podcast about the only thing that truly matters, football!
Football! That was a lot of moxie out of you. Welcome to the show. Woo!
What up, kids?
Normally I introduce the show. You just jumped on that right there. That was
Dude.
beautiful.
Sorry.
Wow, episode's over. That's the end. It can't get any better than that.
Easy.
It doesn't get any better than that. Wow, yeah, welcome. That was awesome. I was not expecting that. You surprised me. Today we are going to be doing something.
I'm full of surprises this week.
Oh, yeah, that's
Boogity
boo! And that's all of them. Yeah, this week, if you watched our episode last week, you were probably expecting us to do some fantasy football stuff. We did mention that we were going to be doing that. So welcome to the Fantasy Football Primer. We are pre-NFL training camp. We're pretty much pre-OTAs, too. There's a little bit of stuff going on, but not a whole lot. So, the NFL fantasy football landscape changes constantly. Rankings will shift as hype builds. Teams will announce that their starting running backs are now their sixth-string tight ends, and it's just a wild time. So we will see what the hype brings, but right now these are some rankings that we wanted to bring to you in case you're in a dynasty league that's starting out, or if you are, just awkwardly looking for some fantasy football news in the month of May. Don't blame you.
We were like, what should we talk about this week? But the truth is, we love fantasy football. I don't know how other people work, but Colin and I, we want to be dominant in our leagues. We start looking at fantasy stuff pretty dang early. We do a lot of mock drafts. We do a lot of our own stuff. Combined, we have 5 of the 13 years of championships in our league, and we've had a core group of 7 people that we've fluctuated a few here and there, but a core of 7 in the league on repeat. And Colin has the most. He has 3 wins. I'm the current champion.
Yep.
Fired commissioner.
We have overthrown you. It is now a commission by commit.
I got repealed.
You definitely were removed from office forcefully.
Not because I was abusing power, just because I just wasn't doing enough.
You would be very, very active and then disappear, and it was just like we needed that conconsistency, Yeah, plus, you're too nice. You're too nice. Sometimes you gotta drop the hammer on some people.
Dude. Yeah, true. Yeah. But anyway, so fantasy football right now this week, we decided just kind of, we've been talking a lot of news, just news for 10 episodes, 10 weeks of episodes. So we said, let's just take a pause and just kind of go over some hypothetical stuff that we enjoy talking about.
Yeah.
And then we'll obviously will start to trickle in, new camp casualties and all that kind of stuff, and OTA information, maybe some trades at the June 1st deadline.
And also, the news is being nice to us too. There's really only 3 things to talk about. 2 of them being fairly simple, the other being Julio Jones.
Hit him. Let's go.
Yeah. So David Irving, defensive lineman, who's had an interesting career with the Cowboys, seemed pretty promising as an interior pass rusher, and then was suspended and out of the league, and came back and was released by the Raiders. So expect him to bounce around the vet mins around the different camps here and there. And then the big release was Morgan Moses, longtime tackle for the Washington football team. He was officially released. Expect him to land somewhere for, again, a lower contract, probably on a team that just drafted somebody to be a starter, to push for some competition, and then at the very least a team that maybe needs to have a veteran presence can do so.
Like I said last week on the podcast, he only had he started 16 games total since 2016. So in 4 seasons he only played 1 season. So he's just one of those guys that just has never been able to stay healthy. So we'll see. Maybe he's just a plug and play, like a depth piece at this point. But
yeah, we've had guys like Jason Peters, who he's only really played for the Eagles, but he's been on and off that roster for half of the seasons before, where he is going to start for them at some point during the season. It almost just feels like it. So we'll see where Morgan Moses bounces around to. He'll have a place in the NFL, whether that's 6 weeks from now or week 18. And a team needs a starter going into the playoffs. So he'll find somewhere to land for sure, and I'm sure he'll make an impact, whether it's for 4 games or for 14 or the next 4 seasons.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the big one, Julio Jones. The Atlanta Falcons aren't officially trying to trade him. They are listening to all offers for Julio Jones. If you're unfamiliar with the Falcons situation, they have a huge cap issue right now. They basically bottom of the league as far as available money. Julio Jones is very expensive. Calvin Ridley's a very, very promising player. So promising that they're considering kind of blowing it up, as we've talked about this offseason previously with other teams. You have to make that decision. Matt Ryan's coming to the end of his career. Julio Jones has been injured often, but is still a dominant receiver, but he has a huge contract, which they
12 years in, man. 12 years in. He wasn't injury prone until like the last 3 years. The last 3 years have been tough for him.
I feel like I'm a little bit harsher on him because I've watched him so much more than I think the normal fan, just because NFC South division rival, always have my eye on Julio. He's always burning the Bucks. He hurts his feet almost every single game. He gets 1 foot injury, and it's not like he misses the next 6 weeks. He'll miss like 3 drives, and then he'll be back the next quarter. And it's just like he still will pull off a score line, or a stat line of 10 catches, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he misses a whole quarter.
So let's be honest, he might play, like you're saying, he might play in the game or start a game, but he doesn't finish every game, and then also he plays a lot of games just hurt. I'm just looking at the stats here. In his career, he got drafted in 2011 and 2020. Obviously, there you go, 9 years. Excuse me, I said 12 earlier. 9 years. He's only finished 4 seasons. He's only started all 16 games 4 times for those 9 years. He has 1 with 5 back in 2013, and then the next lowest total is 9 last year. He only started 9 games last year. Yep. So when you're thinking about him, and he went 15, 16, 14, 16, 16, 15, 9.
You see what I'm saying, though? It's usually like 1 or 2 weeks where he might have like an ankle injury, and he comes back from them, and he's always ailing all the time.
But also, you listen to this. 1,600 yards, 1,900 yards, 1,400 yards, 1,450, 1,700 yards, 1,400 yards, 771 last year.
Yeah.
In that order. So if you think he only played 9 games, he had 771. I mean, he's still talent-wise.
That's like a 1,300-yard pace.
Yeah, he's still talent-wise. It's not dropping. It's what's crazy is he struggles to get in the end zone some years.
I think
it's weird. He has 4 seasons of 3 or under touchdowns.
You have to look at Matt Ryan has the issues with inconsistency from season to season too. So I think it's a team struggle. We have seen the demoralization of the Atlanta Falcons happen many a times where it's like out of nowhere, this team that we all know could probably be one of the highest scoring offenses just becomes a dud.
They're terrible.
And
they're the worst second half team in football.
It's one of those things where I think it's almost more mental than it is talent and opportunity. It's more so just that the quarterback and the whole team kind of shut down every other game almost.
So let's move on from the Falcons though. Talk Julio. I'll give you 2 questions.
Okay.
Question 1, where do you want him to land? Where would you like to see him go if he were traded?
I think if you're a fan of the NFL and you're not so biased that you can't look beyond like, oh, I don't want him in my division because he's Julio Jones. He's been in my division his entire career. I can tell you right now, I still love watching him play.
Hell yeah.
It's out of respect, I think the Titans is an obvious one. Very much so talked about.
You would like to see it. You would like to see it. I'm not saying what's possible. I'm saying where would you like to see him play?
Yes, I would like to see that because I think it'd be awesome to watch A.J. Brown and Julio Jones be the top 2 targets on a good offense, right? That would be fun. And then you would be a little out of touch if you didn't say the Chiefs as the other one. Just because could you imagine Patrick Mahomes throwing to Julio Jones and the possibilities that are there? It would be too exciting because the wide receivers that they run right now in Kansas City are mostly small body guys. Could you imagine a monster, the Predator Julio Jones? Obviously he doesn't have the hair anymore, but back in the day, he was the straight up looked like he was out of the movie The Predator. So
fun game for you, Colin. Do you know Julio Jones' real name?
I do not.
His real name, which I had no clue what his real name was, is Quintorris Lopez Jones Jr.
The more
How
you
you
know.
get Julio? How you get Julio out of Quintorris Lopez? I don't know, but interesting.
Hey, the more you know, right?
Yeah, I'm just spreading the wealth of knowledge.
There
And
you
so
go. There you go,
the two
everybody
the
out
two
there.
teams if I was going to do it that I would like to see him play for similarly. I actually think I think it would be pretty cool to see him go to Green Bay.
Okay, that's a good one.
I think that'd be pretty random. That'd be pretty fun. And then the other one was kind of I don't know. I wouldn't even say it's selfish. I think it's interesting, but I think him going to Dallas would be cool because you have him with Dak. I saw him wearing a Cowboys shirt, literally posted on Instagram like 2 days ago. He also came out and said he wants to play with Cam. I mean, he's over here working out with Derrick Henry right now. They've been working out together the last few weeks, and I'm like, man, like he's touching a lot of bases. He's just pulling at everyone's heartstrings. I don't know where he's going to go, but I would like to see him. I think not picking the Titans. I think him playing with Dak and down there in Dallas would be fun, as well as him going to Green Bay and giving Aaron and Devonte Adams that would be insane.
I like the Green Bay. I'm not a fan of the Dallas one, just because I think
I
they
also
have.
thought of Baltimore would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I get you. I just feel that might be one where he gets wasted a little bit. That's. But
Yeah,
for the Dallas
it's
one, I think they
possible,
have
but
Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. That's an exciting three wide receivers right there. I don't want to see in Arizona where we start to have 5 or 6 good wide receivers where you already know that everybody's
that's
going to miss a couple of balls a game.
fair. I just felt like, man, you're like, oh yeah, we can line up 4 wide with him and then have Zeke, and then it's just good luck.
Yeah, I get you.
I think that's pretty cool. But
Yeah, no. I mean, it is exciting to put him on a high-powered offense, and you get excited. That's why.
where do you think he will go? Do you think he'll get traded, or do you think he
Uh,
ends up
I actually
playing
do
there?
think he's going to get traded. I think it's going to happen at some point.
What's fair
And
compensation?
fair compensation for Julio Jones. So originally, when I did my pre-mock live mock draft that I was doing, I made a Julio Jones a part of that, and I traded him for a first round pick, and a fourth round pick, and the compensation was Julio Jones and a fifth. That is something that I feel is fair, but the first round pick was to Baltimore at 27. So it was a later first round pick. So I feel like that's a pretty fair one because the contract is the biggest factor. More than
Yeah.
anything, Atlanta is in a situation financially where the contract matters more than having a player like Julio Jones because they're comfortable moving into the season with Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts also being an exciting prospect. So I think the financial factor could push it into an easy second round pick. Or late first if you're a confident team that thinks you're going to be in the 20s. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a second and a fourth. If you're a team that's sitting there, you're like, man, why not?
Yeah.
If you have the room and you can even do voidable years and throw, hey, 3 years guaranteed. This is really a 1 year contract. You'll get your money over the 3 years. You can sign somewhere else next year. We'll still pay you.
Yeah.
Like there's so many creative things you can do with the cap.
Definitely.
Why not? Why not? If you're a contender that might just need that push, example the Packers. Like if you just go ahead and throw him on that team, yeah. But anyway, just a thought.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think? What do you think is what do you think is the most likely landing spot though? Like, do you think he's going to be traded? You think Tennessee?
Okay. I think it's the Arthur Smith, the John Robinson connection, the fact that the Titans players are all tweeting about it, and
the hype is real.
They're pushing for it. I mean, AJ Brown's idol is Julio Jones. I guarantee you, if you're like, hey AJ, we have to sign you to a fat contract next year, but we can't give you what you want because of like Julio, he'd be like, okay, I'm willing to look at some options, And same thing with Tannehill wants to restructure. I guarantee you, so will Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry's out here saying tighten the F up, like I guarantee you that they're willing to work with it.
Yeah, I think,
and we need wide receivers. That's the other thing. It's a glaring hole.
Yeah.
So it's like it makes sense too. Like there's just a lot of stuff that's falling in the right place for this right now.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like it as the most obvious option, the most likely option. I think the NFL would be good for it. So I'm all for it as a fan of watching Julio Jones for the last 10 years.
And
whatever.
It'd be a good offense for him to be in too, man. He would eat on play action.
Yeah.
Eat. Think about what AJ does. Think about what Julio does when AJ's on the other side, and Derrick Henry's back there.
Yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to watch. All right, well that's kind of it for the news, though. I think that pretty much covers everything. There isn't whole lot going on in the NFL right now outside of that. The Tim Tebow videos was fun.
A few surgeries here and there, little cleanups, nothing serious,
Scopes,
but
bone spurs, things that'll all be healed by the time the NFL
get healthy
season comes around.
for July.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, all those things are normal, and that's not really news. So
let's talk about what we can control, how we run this whole thing. Fantasy football. First of all, I wanted to bring this up. What's your favorite? I know you've probably been on a few different fantasy football websites. Which one do you like the most?
I am a fan of the Fantasy Footballers. I think that's one. I don't know if you're familiar. They're also a podcast and all that stuff. It's three guys that are just football guys. They're all Cardinals fans, so they are,
slightly biased.
They have Homer issues, but so do all of us,
Absolutely.
You were talking before the show about putting all the Titans as the number one ranking at every position. So
as a joke,
but you did put Derrick Henry number one, not as a joke. Yeah. So, I like them. I'm more of a fan of specific style of analysts. I'm not necessarily a big fan of fantasy football analysts, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I like
so
stats
I was meaning, do you like ESPN as a platform, Yahoo, NFL.com? I know that's where we've always been on NFL.com.
I do favor NFL.com.
Yeah, I do too. And then in terms of like my mock draft stuff, I like Fantasy Football Calculator a lot.
Same here. Yep.
I just think their platform's super easy to use, and I like that. You can jump in with your boys. It's easy to communicate. I think.
Last year, I randomly was mocking with one of our league mates, and the only reason that we found out was because we kept changing our name to things that we like. You put your name as something you think is funny or you think is like whatever, or it's your name or whatever, and we did 3 in a row, and we both text each other like, "Are you in a mock draft right now?" And it was, and we were in a mock draft 3 in a row together.
I feel like I am a criminal at work mocker.
Oh,
like I'll just be like I have 3 monitors and just like on the one that's like to the side, just doing occasional mocks. Just ignore me. But anyway, let's jump into a few rankings. Okay. I think we should go through the positions here just for fun. We're gonna do offensive positions. We're gonna stick out of defenses and kickers just for now because the Titans don't even have a kicker on the roster. So
defenses really depend on matchups, and there are some good defenses out there, some that have good returners, but that's for later talks because we have to figure out who those all are.
Yeah, so we're going to jump right into quarterbacks, the most important position.
The most important position on the football field, not in the fantasy lineup.
Not in the fantasy lineup, unless you get a quarterback that can score a ton of points every week and is reliable. I want to make this clear. We had typically done standard scoring forever, so it was even at one point it was 50 yards was 1 point, and then it was 25 yards passing is 1 point, and then it was 6 points for a touchdown for passing, and now it's 4 points for a touchdown passing.
That's more of the regular scoring now.
Yeah. So I think draft strategy and rankings also depends on your scoring system. So for us talking about these rankings, I'll just run through quick. 10 yards rushing, 10 yards receiving is a point. Receiving and rushing touchdowns are worth how many points, Colin?
6 points.
6 points, which is the difference from passing, which is 4.
25. And we are
yards passing. Yeah,
we are half point PPR. So that means every reception you get half a point per reception. So guys like Christian McCaffrey in a half a point PPR might get you 60 more points than guys like Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
So that will reflect some of our rankings. It depends on your feels.
With that, we'll jump into quarterback. For me, I've had the personal strategy in multiple years back to back now where I've taken Patrick Mahomes, and I'm in a couple different leagues, and I like, at least in one of my leagues, to take him with my first or second round pick. He's still, to me, the best quarterback that you could draft. They're going to throw the ball plenty. He's going to throw plenty of touchdowns. I think that he's still number one for me. Number two is Josh Allen. The dude runs quite a bit still.
Yeah.
And the offense is getting better, and he's gotten so much better as a player. Far less turnovers. Doesn't hurt you in fantasy as much.
Aaron Rodgers wasn't a stud last year. He would have been the MVP.
I agree. It should have been Derrick Henry. You're right. And then Aaron Rodgers is my third in my ranking because it doesn't matter, man. This guy, you start him all. I love drafting one of these top guys, and you just start him 16 weeks straight. It's like or 15 weeks. There's just no hesitation, and I love that. So Rodgers is in my ranking, and then Matt Stafford is my big quarterback for this year. I think Matt Stafford is gonna just blow the barn doors off this year with this offense, and with the defense that can support him. I think they're gonna have a lot. Like plenty of times, the Rams would turn someone over and they would settle for a field goal rather than.
You took Lamar out and put Stafford in.
Hell yeah!
We were talking right before the show, and he did that right as we started.
Yeah, I did. And then Kyler Murray, I think just that offense they're building, he's my fifth guy for sure at quarterback. There's just so many weapons, and he scores a lot of touchdowns. He can run the ball. He can do everything. So my sleeper for quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. The dude had 40 touchdowns combined last year. He had the same amount of rushing touchdowns as Lamar Jackson. And I think people sleep on him a little bit. And if they do trade for Julio Jones, he is going to be a legitimate option at fantasy for quarterback.
Okay. My rankings differ very much so. I think we have a lot of fluctuation here in our rankings. Josh Allen is my number one. I think this is projecting fantasy value. I don't think so. Again, these are the rankings. These aren't necessarily the draft order to expect. I'm projecting the number one fantasy quarterback will be Josh Allen. His ability to run the ball, the receivers, Dawson Knox at tight end, the offensive line staying together / improving. I think these are all factors where Josh Allen is going to continue to get better and could be the number one quarterback for fantasy football next year when you combine the ability to throw.
I love the Bills. I love what they've done.
It's good.
I love what they've done.
Kyler Murray is my second. You're fifth. I think this is just, again, a realizing the landscape of the NFL, the running quarterback is a lot more valuable in fantasy football. Just because of 6 points for a touchdown. If a quarterback runs for 80 yards and throws 4 interceptions, that cancels out. So they could have a 400-yard passing game, 4 touchdowns, 4 picks, 80 yards rushing. Kyler Murray is going to scramble for pretty much 80 yards any game he's healthy. Can he stay healthy?
One thing about rushing quarterbacks, they do have quite a few more fumbles, though. And that was the case for Kyler last year.
And Josh Allen.
And Josh Allen, yeah. Not that they should knock them down the rankings, but it is something to pay attention to.
They make up for it in the amount of rushing yards and touchdowns they get. Patrick Mahomes, number 3. For me, the dude is just absolutely incredible. And he could also get it done with his legs. He just doesn't do it as often because they usually have a guy running down the field faster than anybody else on the field, so it's really easy to just throw a touchdown.
Man, the one play in NFL history, I guess 2 plays that live rent-free in my head. Kevin Dyson reaching for the goal line for the Titans, and then Patrick Mahomes at the end of the second quarter in the AFC Championship game versus Titans. He scrambles
all the way around the outside.
Around the outside, for whatever reason, no one is faster than him for that particular moment. He's just waddling his way around the corner. How he does, he hits the sideline. They can't push him out of bounds. He just goes for a 30-yard touchdown on 3rd and 13, and there's 17 seconds left in the half. I was just like,
I know that shocked everyone.
That play lives written free in my head. Anyway, go ahead. Nightmare. The guy can run still. It's crazy.
So anything that they can do, he can do better.
He's ketchup. Dude.
He's
ketchup.
Yeah, he's great. Tom Brady is my number 4. I had to put him in here because, one, Bucs fan, and
Weapon, man.
But that's the truth. That offense clicked last year. Towards the back half of that season, the Bucs were pretty much unstoppable. And
40 points in the first half. Okay, see you later.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where everybody's back. Nobody's at that point. Nobody's getting any worse than Tom Brady's aging. That's all you could say. He doesn't he doesn't need any other statements other than look at his weapons and he's Tom Brady. And then fifth, I have Lamar Jackson. Lamar won me a league. I still think he's top quarterback in the top fantasy quarterback in the NFL because of his ability to run the ball, and they are trying to improve the receiving options around him.
They definitely did this year.
And that is important because they have been lacking. And no offense to guys like Willie Snead, it's just there is a difference in the threat level of those guys running down the field, and having, whether it be a normal sized wide receiver outside of Hollywood Brown as the only guy, it does make a difference for a quarterback. So hopefully we'll see better.
It opens things up for the whole offense, like the tight ends. I mean, everything.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll see better.
Having good guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my sleeper to potentially crack the top 5 guy to take a look at, and I think this is a lot of people's sleeper, is Justin Herbert. The fantasy boom bust of him last season, where it kind of was just like, I was like, oh, it's a rookie quarterback, we don't expect much. Huge returns. His rushing ability, his willingness to plow over linebackers at the goal line for touchdowns. His arm was incredible last season, and then at the end of the season, it was just miserable. He was constantly under pressure, turnovers, and all that stuff like a rookie quarterback should. So going into year 2, he has all the weapons, and it should be pretty solid.
Honestly, I like him in terms of what I saw, but this last in the NFL, I like what I saw.
Yeah.
In college, I didn't love what I saw.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the difference there. I don't know whether something just that offense works well for him, or things just clicked, or the right players, the right coaches, like whatever it is. I don't know what we're going to see a year 2. Mm-hmm. One thing to note is it's not like he's playing like in the AFC West. He's going to need to throw a lot.
Mm-hmm. That is fair.
But he does play the Broncos, who have one of the best secondaries if not the best secondary in the NFL,
plays the Raiders
2 times, and he plays the Raiders. So it's, in terms of value, he's gonna get a lot of games where he's coming from behind.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to note for quarterbacks, again, most important position on an NFL field for fantasy. This is a position that you could definitely look to stream. These guys are guys that you won't be able to just pick up off the waiver wire on any given week, but there are guys out there that you can easily scoop and have a good plug and play situation based off of matchups. So don't lock yourself in on a quarterback necessarily if you think there are better positions. We'll talk more about draft strategies and stuff like that later. But let's move into running backs.
Great. Yeah, I'll start. Number 1 is the king, no doubt. We're getting 2,000 yards rushing from Derrick Henry unless we trade for Julio Jones. It's going to be a repeat 2K season because that's the way they have to win.
Yeah.
But anyway, Derrick Henry legitimately is the number 1 guy. He gets the most volume in terms of carries out of any player, any running back in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I know he doesn't get PPR. If this is a non-PPR conversation, he's number 1 far and away. But because of half-point PPR, it gets other people closer to him, which you can maybe make the argument to leapfrog.
I still think there's some argument there because Christian McCaffrey can receive 1,000 yards. He doesn't need the PPR necessarily.
But what if he's not healthy next year?
I mean, what if Derrick Henry's not healthy next year? You can use the health.
Don't you even say that? Don't even manifest.
Well,
that.
You just manifested it for Christian McCaffrey. Injuries happen to everyone.
He just missed nearly a full season. You know who didn't? Was Derrick.
Yeah. Derrick. So what if this year they flip flop? Look at that. Now Derrick Henry.
I'm just saying, take it back. Don't bring that bad energy, that bad vibe.
You gotta calm down. I was just saying there is still an argument. 1,000 yards receiving and over 1,000 yards rushing does still equal 2,000 yards. So that was my whole point. You brought up injuries.
Derrick Henry will be the number 1 fantasy football running back. Book it. And then Dalvin Cook is my second guy. And then my third is Alvin Kamara. I think they're going to use him more than they ever have not having Drew Brees. I think they're going to need to get the ball into their best playmakers' hands because they're not going to be able to get into Michael Thomas's hand as much because they're not going to be able to rely on Taysom and Jameis, whatever combination you get there, as much as you could to Brees to throw to Thomas 18 times a game. And Thomas also isn't as healthy as he has been in his past. And then Christian McCaffrey is my fourth guy. He potentially could be number 1 if he has a season like we saw him have a few years ago. And then Saquon is still up there for me. I think same deal. He got hurt week 2 last year. So that offense is much improved. They drafted some guys. Dan Jones took a step forward, I think, throughout the year. And then my big sleeper, Especially too with the defense being good for the Giants, I think they have an opportunity to, get Saquon some more opportunities. But anyway, my sleeper for the year running back is Jonathan Taylor. I think he physically has every tool you could want to have as a running back. He can catch the ball well as block as a running back. So he's a 3-down back. I know they have some depth there, but that offensive line is so damn good, and their defense is good. They're just the type of team that likes to run, and they use play action well, and screen game to him is a big thing too. Yeah. So I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. He's a goal line back too. I like him a lot.
I had a lot of stock in Jonathan Taylor last year, and it was nice. I definitely think you might be on an uphill battle to try and get him in a league at a position that you feel like is a sleeper value. He's probably going to go as like the 6th or 7th running back off the board. And
I put these guys as sleepers to make it into the final 5 rankings at the end of the year.
Yeah,
I'm saying Jonathan Taylor you might not get him in round 5, but he might perform into that top 5.
Sure. My sleeper is going to go in round 2 also. So that's not what I was saying. I was saying more of like he's one of those guys where you're either going to be incredibly happy that you drafted him or very disappointed because Marlon Mack is back with the Colts and he was injured like on the first play of week 1 last year. So they are not like low on depth. They have Nyheim Hines who gets all of his work. They do not take away from Nyheim Hines because he is a threat as a receiver. He did like a backflip last year in the end zone. And everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, look at him!" He's like, "Oh, you guys like that? I'll do 3 backflips every game because I'll score 3 touchdowns every game." And it was tragic as a Jonathan Taylor owner.
He had one game where he went off on the Titans on Thursday night.
Yeah, it hurts. So my rankings, Christian McCaffrey is my number 1. Again, this is half point PPR. If we weren't in half point PPR, I would probably put Dalvin Cook as my number 1, just because I just think that he is the most complete, like whether it be power, speed, agility, tackle breaking, receiving as a running back in the NFL. That's not taking away from the absolute monster that Derrick Henry is and the incredibly athletic Christian McCaffrey. It's just my preference on running back style. I like a guy that
Dalvin's awesome.
I like a guy that's going to hit a hole, and then if there's somebody in that hole, is also going to plow them over.
I just wonder, Dalvin. It's like once a year, it's like Dalvin's hamstring. Yeah. I'm like,
yep.
Like, damn, dude.
I think he's a perennial number 2 running back rank for almost everyone out there because you are either the Christian McCaffrey guy or you're the Derrick Henry guy. But no matter what, Dalvin Cook will be number 2. So
I had the number 2 overall pick in our fantasy draft this last year, and I was sitting there looking at the list, and Derrick Henry was like number 4 or 5, and I was just like Derrick Henry number 2. Yeah. 2,000-yard rushing season, I win the league. So like, if you hit on these guys we're talking about right now, if you pick the one that doesn't get hurt and the one that has the good season, you usually do very well in your fantasy season.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Dalvin Cook is my number 2. I think he's one of those guys where you're guaranteed to have success as long as he stays healthy. That's the only factor. Derrick Henry is an absolute monster. The last 2 seasons has been incredible. King Henry, 2K, awesome stuff to watch. The only downfall to Derrick Henry, and I don't know why they don't throw him the ball more, because I swear once a season he breaks an 80-yard screen pass for a touchdown. If they just threw him the ball more, it's literally a volume issue. They just don't do it. And
it will happen more this year with less.
Yeah, potentially.
Targets to go around.
Even though they had less depth this year, I felt like we saw way more backup running backs coming in for almost whole drives as a way to relieve Derrick Henry a little bit. As a Titans fan, you can speak to that because, I mean, I feel like you would remember what's-his-face scored quite a few touchdowns. The former Texan, Deontay Foreman.
He scored 1 touchdown.
Okay.
But I was gonna say our third round pick that didn't get to see the field for over. He was out the first 10 games. Darrington Evans, and he's our returner, our starting returner. Going to this year, he's a guy that they do want to get involved. So he will be the handcuff for Derrick Henry, and he will have full drives. They do like to do that a lot.
Yeah. So it was just something that I wanted to note is that it's. Derrick Henry gets a lot of touches, and that's usually the downfall of running backs in the NFL.
The downfall, too, of Derrick Henry compared to other guys is if the Titans are down 27 points, Derrick Henry's value is gone.
Yep.
They do try to stick to it a little bit, but if we're playing from behind, Darrington Evans is going to have more snaps. We're going to be in the shotgun. There's no reason to have Derrick at shotgun on our own 20.
Yeah.
So
My number 4 running back is Alvin Kamara. I think if you've watched the Saints the last 2 years as Drew Brees has slowly, not deteriorated, but the offense has changed, you can understand that Alvin Kamara is going to be the focal point of the offense no matter what. And if that is a Jameis throwing 30 interceptions offense, Alvin Kamara will still catch 8 passes a game.
He'll have 1,200 yards receiving.
He'll still have 20 touches a game at some point, whether it's receiving or rushing. He'll still get his share. So his value stands, and he can easily score 6 touchdowns in a game. So this is I think the changing point for all fantasy rankings is who is your number 5. A lot of Saquon Barkley's, a lot of the Jonathan Taylor's, a lot of the all of the guys that have been up here in the past. Mine is Zeke. I think when you have Dak coming back, that changes this entire offense. I almost looked at last season as a year off for Zeke. But it actually wasn't. I think he was running back 8 or 9 on the season. Disappointing season.
He wasn't as bad as people thought he was.
Disappointing season for where you drafted him, which was usually pick 2 or 4, in that range, 2 to 4. And so I think when you look at the offense as a whole, this is a great opportunity for the entire team to bounce back, and that's why I have Zeke here at 5. I think if they can get him back into a place where the team isn't relying on him to carry the load, it'll be a lot easier. And then my sleeper is Joe Mixon, who should also be going early round 2, maybe maybe the back end of round 1. These are guys that we think are just going to crack the top 5 because they have changes to their schemes, or their offensive lines have improved, or they just are high volume players, and Joe Mixon is that case. He's going to be
Giovanni Bernard.
No Gio. He's going to be a high volume player, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. Wide receivers.
Yeah.
We'll go there now. Keep it moving. We both, no need to sugarcoat it. We both have the same guy. Devonte Adams is he's just the number 1 wide receiver for me right now, especially with the lack of other guys on that depth chart at wide receiver. I think that he's the guy they look to in the end zone. He's the guy they look to in crunch time, and they absolutely should be.
Yeah.
Because he's so sure-handed. He's so good. He's the number 1 wide receiver for me. Second, I have D-Hop. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, he just simply is the best, aside from probably Julio Jones at pointing a ball, or high pointing a ball in contested catches in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I just think he's phenomenal. Okay, then Stefan Diggs, for PPR specifically. Stefan Diggs, man, I've drafted him in leagues 2 years in a row, and I had him on my team, my championship team last year. The dude just kills it. He has one game where 3 or 4 games a year where he'll have like 200 yards and 1 touchdown or whatever. But then he also just consistent. 14 receptions.
Yeah.
97 yards, 1 touchdown.
Great season.
Like, oh, great. Yes, he had 1,500 yards last year.
Yeah, it was an incredible year. Josh Allen improving was awesome.
Just killed it. And so then next up I have Tyreek Hill. The guy is just always a weapon. Anytime he gets the ball in that offense, they make plays that are specific for him. And I do think he improved as a route runner, and across the middle of the field, they did some things with him this year they didn't do in previous. Mm-hmm. So I think that as a player, he's always going to be up there in terms of production. And then A.J. Brown, especially, he performed like a top 5 wide receiver last year. Without Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, and like we're saying, Josh Reynolds is the number 2 guy there for Tennessee. So I think that he probably should end up with targets enough to put him in the top 5 in terms of giving the PPR boost, as well as just he's the only guy.
Yeah.
So
he's a tank.
He's the guy, not the only guy. I like Josh Reynolds as a player, but he's not a fantasy football guy. But if they do trade for Julio, that changes. I don't think A.J. Brown cracks the top 10.
Agreed. Yeah.
If they trade for Julio, A.J. Brown will have a great season, but I don't think he will have a top 5 fantasy football season.
Hard to sustain 2 top 5 guys.
Yeah, and then my other guy is Justin Jefferson, is the guy who I think is a guy who could crack that top 5. I do think that he's just different.
Yeah.
Like he had a really, really good year. He, especially with a lot of other good pass catchers on that offense, and an offense that wasn't dedicated to passing. I mean, Dalvin Cook had a phenomenal year, and he still managed to be the guy that everyone was talking about at the end of the year, not even Dalvin.
Yeah.
So I think that Justin Jefferson could get the type of volume that we seen from Thielen, and when Diggs was there, when they had their good season, I think he'll be the next guy that benefits from having that really good wide receiver across from him. And I think he could do it.
Yeah, I totally with you on that. I really like Justin Jefferson. I'm a big Adam Thielen fan. I think he's super undervalued, and I will always love me some Adam Thielen. But Justin Jefferson looks just different.
Yeah,
just different at the the. Oh gosh, wisdom's the wrong word. He looks like a veteran wide receiver in the NFL already. And
dude, there was just so many touchdowns he had where there wasn't anyone within like 25 yards. Like he just I'm serious. I'm like over here like this guy's doing the gritty on the 42-yard line. Like, geez, man, this guy's killing people.
Yeah. All right.
Super good.
My receiver rankings. Devonte Adams again. We talked about it. There's no need to cover it again. He's just that guy. Probably the only one to go in the first round of most fantasy football drafts. Tyreek Hill is my second. I think he is just an X factor in a game where against the Bucs in the regular season this year, his first quarter was 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he could do that every week against any team because if you underestimate the necessity of putting a safety over the top of Tyreek Hill, he will literally show you why that is not a good idea. And that's no joke. He'll just say, Pat, they ain't covering me deep. They're playing me one-on-one. Let's just do it, and that'll happen. So
the Bucs learned that in that first quarter in the first matchup.
Yep. And then they shut it down later. And then
definitely did.
DeAndre Hopkins is my third. I'm just looking at the Cardinals as a team where there are going to be a lot of fancy playmakers. Kyler Murray is going to get points. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get points, and I think the combination of those two could be one of the best quarterback wide receiver combos this season.
I think his yards are down this year. His touchdowns are up this year.
I wouldn't be surprised to see the exact same. That exactly happening. And then Stefan Diggs is a guy that last year dropped off a lot of people's rankings because he was going to Josh Allen, who everybody thought was a pretty trash passer. Proved that very wrong. And Stefan Diggs was easily, in my opinion, he was the number 2 wide receiver last season.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, I don't think he's going to replicate the season necessarily, but I do expect him to still manage to be Josh Allen's go-to guy, pull off some crazy games with 180 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and be really fun to watch. So my number 4, and then DK Metcalf is the guy I went with at number 5 here. Russ's deep ball is so exciting. I think DK Metcalf is going to continue to get better, and I think the thing that you have to look for as like NFL side is staying calm in a game, staying focused in a game. That passion needs to be focused, and he could stay in a game and not have like a 4 reception game. He could probably be a top 5 wide receiver. My sleeper is a little bit more out there. It's Robert Woods. I'm really excited about Matthew Stafford too. You mentioned him as your number 4 quarterback. Robert Woods to me is a guy that in this offense could easily be an incredible wide receiver. He has had horrible touchdown returns in his career, and this is just, if that could change, he could easily be one of those guys that slips into the top 5 by the end of the season. So that was my sleeper pick at the wide receiver position.
I like it a lot. I've always liked Rob Woods. Big fan. Tight ends. You're gonna have this is my hot take from last week, but I had Kyle Pitts is going to be in the top 3 this year, and I stay true to that prediction. Travis Kelce, number 1 for me. He will always be number 1 for me. I think that, simply put, a guy that's getting 11 receptions in the Super Bowl is going to be a tight end that is unlike any of the other tight ends in the league. He is the focal point for that offense. When Travis Kelce is moving the ball, they win games. And that's what they do that. And he's the catalyst for that team. Okay. Then Darren Waller. I just think he's the most explosive of the tight end group. I'm interested to see Kyle Pitts, but Darren Waller, in terms of, throw him the ball on a slant, he could take that thing 65 yards, and he did that once this year, or last year, sorry. And I think that, I just think he's Jared Cook when he was young.
He's an impact player.
Yeah, he's literally Jared Cook when he was young. And then Kyle Pitts is my third guy. I think if they don't trade Julio, Kyle Pitts is the third guy. I think if they trade him, Kyle Pitts might not be in the top 5. I think he needs the offense to be spread out, and then he will eat across the middle. So I like Kyle Pitts with the concept of Julio's on the Titans win the Super Bowl. And then I have George Kittle in my 4th spot. He comes back healthy, and he has good rapport with Jimmy G, and maybe he starts working with little Trey Lance and things go. But he's always going to be in the 5 for me. Mm-hmm. And then Mark Andrews, I mean, with the expanded wide receiver core that the Ravens have been putting together this offseason, Sammy Watkins and Rashad Bateman, I think that he already is Lamar's favorite target, and I don't think that changes this year. I think the only thing that changes is now everyone's got to worry about these other dudes, and Mark Andrews has more mismatches. Definitely. So I like him there, and he could end up number 1 on this list. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And then my sleeper pick is Gerald Everett. He moves from the Rams interdivision to the Seahawks, and I think that he's gonna. I think Russ does like tight ends. We've seen him do really well with tight ends in his career. I think that an athletic guy like him fits that offense pretty darn good, and I think he'll do well.
Nice. Yeah, I like your list. It's pretty much my list. Travis Kelce number 1 is it should be everybody's number 1. If you don't have Travis Kelce number 1, you are historically incorrect. That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, couldn't be more wrong.
Yeah, factually wrong. Sorry. That's it. End of conversation. Darren Waller is just absolute monster wide receiver playing tight end, essentially Kyle Pitts' model, I think, going forward as an NFL Agreed. Tight end. Darren Waller will play more like a wide receiver than a tight end for your fantasy football team, which is usually more important for fantasy football and less so for NFL teams. George Kittle, I agree. I think whether it's Jimmy G, Trey Lance, we've seen so many different quarterbacks, whether it's Beathard, and it's just like no matter what, George Kittle will get his on the field, and
as long as he's healthy,
as long as he's on the field, no matter who is throwing him the ball, he can catch a 5-yard slant and make it work. So
definitely agree.
A guy that has to stay in that top 5 for me is number 3. And then you talked about Mark Andrews. I personally am one of those guys that was on board the Mark Andrews train real early on. We were kind of talking about maybe doing our best picks we've had. I was one of those guys that sleeper picked Mark Andrews in like the 14th round that season that he broke out and traded him and wished I didn't, but I tried to return the value, But yeah, Mark Andrews, especially going down the middle of the field, gets a lot of work from Lamar. It's trust throwing that Mark Andrews is going to be there and that Mark Andrews is going to win the jump for the ball. He usually does, and he's pretty damn good at catching the ball. So I'll trust, like Lamar does, that Mark Andrews is going to get his, and he scores a lot of touchdowns. So that's good.
Yeah.
My 5th is TJ Hawkinson, not necessarily because I think he's going to be the 5th best tight end, mostly just because the tight end landscape is pretty bleak. You have Kyle,
and the Lions have no wide receivers.
And that's exactly what I was going to say is the Lions lost everyone on the skill position side. They brought in a bunch of dudes that are going to be NFL vets that will get jobs done. And they have a quarterback in Jared Goff, who has historically supported tight ends. If you are unfamiliar, Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett both got theirs for a couple of seasons there. If you didn't see the Rams' offensive style, it was basically just very short throws to Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods anyway. So TJ Hawkinson is a mismatch. He is one of those big-bodied, fast guys.
Especially in PPR.
So I'm looking at him as a potential the number 5 there, just based off of volume. And then my sleeper is Logan Thomas. He was the guy that I rolled with for a good chunk of last year after I moved on from Darren Waller. And I think he's one of those guys where Fitzy is gonna probably keep him relevant all season long. Tight ends are hard to find. 10 tight ends every week. I think he can be easily one of those guys and have a couple of good, top 2, top 3 weeks. So Logan Thomas is my sleeper at the tight end position. He looks like he's a very big mismatch type of guy. So yeah,
I like it a lot. I have 2 things here.
Okay.
First thing I want to do is my hot take.
Okay.
For this episode.
Ready?
Let's go. Hot take. Let's go. Okay, so my hot take is Matt Stafford, the one and only Matthew Stafford, is going to have more touchdown passes than Patrick Mahomes this year. I think he is going to be he's going to find so much opportunity in that Sean McVay offense of the and types of wide receivers. We've seen him work with all sorts of talent throughout the years as the Lions quarterback, but I don't think he's had two wide receivers that are as good as Cup and Woods. I think they're the best pairing he's had, and I think the offensive style is the best style that fits him rather than
that's my
excitement. I just think he's just gonna crush it. So that's my hot take for the episode. And then
just on your hot take really quick, I'm totally down with that. I love that. I love the Matt Stafford hype. I think when you look at a guy that's been on the Lions for as long as he has, we've watched so many different coordinators, so many different styles come through, and every single time all the teams had to do was just rely on Matthew Stafford to keep them in. The cardiac cats were a thing because Matthew Stafford is a thing, and this offensive scheme could be very, very exciting to watch as an NFL fan with a guy like Matt Stafford.
And for the first time he'll have a defense that's better than the offense.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that's he's never even remotely had that much support. So I think that the Rams are really good. Like I think I love what they did. Mm-hmm. They lost some defensive backs, but overall they're okay. Yeah. Anyway, and the last thing was, can you just give me for your game this episode
I saw it.
Three of the top 5 fantasy performances last year. Can you think of 3? Just it doesn't matter if you get 1 and 5 and 4. Just who do you think crushed it last year?
Alvin's 6 touchdown game has to be number 1, right?
It is number 2.
Oh, it is number 2. Okay.
Yeah, imagine playing Alvin Kamara in the championship week. Ugh.
Yeah.
6 touchdowns. Bless up, I didn't have.
That was the championship week.
Yeah.
Okay.
155 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 17.
Wow.
And I was actually at my girlfriend's place, and she's a diehard Vikings fan, and that wasn't good. It wasn't a good time. It was Christmas Eve game.
Yeah.
Our Christmas Day game. They got clapped.
It was pretty bad. Okay. Trying to think. I feel like there was a Dalvin Cook 3 touchdown game, but that might not have been a lot of yards. There was Tyreek's 203 game.
Are these official guesses?
I mean, if I get one right, I guess let me know. But
they're both right.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm asking. Like, so
I mean, I'm literally saying it out loud.
Tyreek Hill's game against the Buccaneers was the number 1 fantasy football performance of the year. 269 and 3 touchdowns with 13 catches.
Yeah, okay.
PPR boosts him up. He was 1.7 points higher than Alvin Kamara. And then the other one was Dalvin Cook was number 4 on the list. 163 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 receptions, and 1 receiving touchdown for 63 yards. So he caught 1 screen, took it to the house. So 4 touchdown game. Yeah. That was against the Packers.
All right. The other.
So you owe me 1 more, and you have.
Well,
you need 2.
I have 3 of the top 5, but I'm missing 3 and 5. I don't think there was any remarkable quarterback performances.
Nope.
Stefan Diggs. Was there a Stefan Diggs game where he had 3 touchdowns as well? Was that one of them?
Against the Patriots is week 13, Stefan Diggs, 3 touchdowns.
Is that a top 5 performance?
No, number 13. Mahomes at 18 is the first quarterback.
Wow, that's a long ways down. Okay. I know that there was a game where Derrick Henry had like 270 yards rushing or something crazy like that, but I don't think he had more than 2 touchdowns.
Derrick Henry had 4 games of 200 plus. Last year.
I'm just saying. I know there was one where he was like 270, but I think he only had like 2 touchdowns. Touchdowns are just worth more points. That's why.
Yeah.
I don't think he didn't make it into the top 5 ever, right?
No, he has.
Darren Waller? Is Darren Waller's monster game in there?
It's number 6.
Oh, no. That was like
270 touchdowns.
Yeah, 270 yards and like 2 touchdowns or something like that.
But it's the 13 catches that do it.
I don't know. Okay, give me the rest of them.
Aaron Jones, week 2, had
okay.
5 touchdowns,
That's right.
4 catches, 68 yards receiving, 168 rushing. And then the other one, Tyler Lockett against the Cardinals, that
Oh,
crazy
3
game.
touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah, and he had 200 yards, 15 catches for PPR.
Yeah.
Really boosted him up
I
there.
had Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. I'm glad my first 2 guesses were right and that the other ones did exist, but dang, that's crazy. Yeah, PPR is the difference maker. Nothing should ever beat Alvin Kamara's 6 touchdown game, and the fact that it did get beat is
in the championship.
Yeah.
Is what's
It
crazy.
was the biggest week. That won way more championships than anything that I've ever remembered.
I mean, Jamal Charles murked me one time against the Raiders in the championship.
Yeah.
He scored 5 touchdowns. That was a murk.
I had Jordan Reed, Kirk Cousins on the Thursday night football game in the championship week. Just a solid 70-point lead to start the night off with a quarterback and a tight end. So that was tough.
But hey, yeah, those are our rankings,
wow, that was fun.
And then that's our just our little game talking about fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a couple strategies real quick.
Yeah.
So a strategy that I'm all about is I'm give me 2 running backs.
Early running back.
Give me two early running backs. Yep. Give me the 2 best guys I can possibly get. Colin and I, we have an interesting league where we are allowed to trade our picks, and we use a whole pick system in which Colin operates, but there's checks and balances involved. So basically, I could propose a trade to someone, they accept it. We send it to 3 other league members. They have to approve the trade. Mm-hmm. And then there's also some fantasy football trade calculators online that kind of can give you a ballpark if a trade's relatively fair, but it's not science. But so I typically try to get 2 first-round picks and go running back is what I try to do every year.
And just to kind of give you an understanding, this isn't the ability to trade future picks, so you can't mortgage a season for a future season. You have to trade within the season's picks. So when he says he's trading for 2 firsts, he means he's usually giving up his second, his third, and like his 5th so that he could do that.
Yeah. So I'll go pick 4, 5, 78.
Yeah.
Like you're just like you just drop way down.
And it's not a type of scenario where somebody can have 25 draft picks. Everybody must have the full roster. So you have to trade, like, I'll take your first and your 16th round and you'll get my second and third. That's the type of trades that we're talking about. So it has balance.
And so if you miss, you're done.
Yep.
If you miss, you're done. So I'm team running backs early. Other people, our team, no running backs. They're like, let's go best skill player. Give me Travis Kelce round 1. Give me Devonte Adams on the snake on the way back or whatever. And they just stacked across the board. Rep the PPR hard.
Yep.
For sure.
And I think that the strategies really kind of determine your entire season here.
Draft.
You're gonna be going into it, and you need to know what you're gonna do. If you decide to go no running back, that means you're gonna be looking at the sleepers, guys like Myles Gaskin in Miami, guys like Travis Etienne, betting on him being, way more important than James Robinson for that.
Grabbing handcuffs. You end up with 6 running backs on your bench because you're hoping that Derrick Henry does get hurt and you have Darrington Evans.
Yeah, there are a lot of guesses going into the no running back strategy, and usually you pick a tight end, a quarterback, 3 wide receivers, and then 8 running backs. But it goes in that order almost. So it is a thing. Early running back is the most tried and true method for the reason that running backs usually win championships. If you can find a healthy, good running back in the first couple of rounds, you usually have a chance to win a league. All it takes is a couple of good lucky weeks. And
both of my championships were behind that strategy.
Yeah, and I will say most of mine are also behind that strategy. The others,
aside from Lamar MVP year.
Well, that one I got him in the 14th round, so that was.
I know, but I'm saying you didn't need to draft 2 great running backs early. Lamar MVP year just went hard.
Yeah, he was a 3rd starting running back and a starting quarterback all in one. It was great. So then there's the other strategy, which is early quarterback that has to be talked about compared to no quarterback. Some people like to stream quarterbacks. The top quarterbacks will usually go, like Mahomes. Last year there was Lamar, and then a couple of other guys will go between the next 3 or 4 rounds.
Well, I went Derrick Henry, Patrick Mahomes last year.
Yeah,
and Cool.
Yeah.
Like you got to think what works for you. I typically am a big stream quarterbacks late. I won my other time with Carson Wentz as my quarterback.
Yeah, you just heard me say that
So,
Kirk Cousins got me a 70-point week in championship week. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my other quarterback was Lamar Jackson in his MVP season when I drafted him in the 14th round.
Yeah.
So, quarterbacks are things that you can find late on. You can stream the entire season and get away with it. I'm the type of person that likes to draft quarterback late and roll with two good quarterbacks streaming constantly, whoever has the better matchup.
I mean, like what Tom Brady was going like round like 13 or 12 last year.
Aaron Rodgers was the 11th quarterback on average in drafts last year. He went in the somewhere between the 8th and the 11th round.
And Tannehill went undrafted and had 40 touchdowns.
Yeah, so
I mean,
you can find
value. Yeah,
unless you are in a special league with two quarterbacks, you can find quarterbacks very, very late. So,
or if your quarterback's touchdowns are worth 6.
Yeah,
6 points per point, or 6 points per touchdown. Yeah. Then you should look at quarterback.
The thing to look for is running quarterbacks will go earlier in drafts because of the success of guys like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray last year for a little while, and Josh Allen, and so on and so forth. So take your shot on a rookie if you believe in them, because they and Tannehill, because they could surprise you. It is one of those things where a guy like Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson might pull off a pretty solid season like Justin Herbert did last year. And people did take shots on Herbert last year too. So,
for sure.
All right, tight ends. That's the last thing to talk about really for draft strategies. Again, the landscape is very, very bleak for tight ends. Usually it's Travis Kelce and 2 or 3 other guys, namely George Kittle and Darren Waller, and then you're pretty much just picking and choosing. Every round or two, one more tight end will go, and you have to decide if it's your time to take one. Otherwise, you can fall back to the end of the draft where you can get guys like Mark Andrews before his breakout, or who knows who it's going to be this year. There's the Darren Waller.
Anthony Ferkser, baby.
Gavin's got his eyes on Ferkser as the number 1 tight end of fantasy.
Ferkser. Stream, you'll see me add and drop him 5 times this year.
Yep. So there's just guys that you pick up every week and drop every week and pick up every week and just keep rolling. So it's up to you, whatever you want to shape your draft like.
Yeah. And then last strategy for me to touch on is the 3 wide receiver strategy.
Oh,
I mean,
picks 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. So there are some people that are like, all right, I'm going to go. All right. And they'll be like in the snake, they'll be like the 9 and the 11.
Yeah.
And they'll go, okay, Adams, Hopkins, comes back around, Allen Robinson.
Yep.
And you're like, fuck, they got some wide receivers. But then their running backs are like Mark Ingram, and you're
Chase like, Edmonds, and you're just I don't know.
but that is definitely a strategy. And if you're in a full point PPR, depending on who you draft, I mean, that could be phenomenal.
Getting 3 stud number 1 worthy wide receivers is one of those strategies where you don't have to tinker with your lineup, and all you need to do at that point is draft 1 other wide receiver for bye weeks, and then a bunch of running backs, tight ends, and quarterbacks.
And just hope one of the running backs works out. Not even both of them, just one of them work out.
Hold me. Yeah. I need to make it to the end of the year. All right. But that's going to do it for us. That is an hour of fantasy football advice from your 2 favorite brothers on the internet talking about football.
In May.
Yeah, again, pre-camp.
Name another podcast that's out here giving you their fantasy football rankings, strategy. I mean, no one else.
That's never happened.
What? Chat, we're waiting. Oh, yeah, we're in live recording process. You can't do
that. So, yeah, that is going to do it for our 11th episode here on Football Over Family.
Pretty darn good.
Yeah, solid. Next week we'll talk about other stuff. I don't know. We're going to talk about camp. We're going to talk about
Colin.
Gavin wants to talk about
I have an idea.
Football cards.
I do want to talk about football cards.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really good. We might have a guest.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I was just thinking this really quick. I'm going to interrupt. What if we did our draft this year, us live on Twitch?
That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be pretty fun. Anyway, cool. We'll noodle that offline.
We're going to talk about eating nachos. All right, thanks, Kevin. I just read that in there. Okay. But yeah, you can find us here on Twitch at Football Over Family. We record our episodes live on the air, and you can hang out with us before and after our recordings and give us your instant feedback. Otherwise, you can catch us in the comment sections on our podcast episodes over at Football Over Family. And if you want to see clipperinos, go ahead and check out Football Over Family on Instagram.
And there will actually be clips because after this week, my life gets a little bit normal.
Clips.
So be ready.
And then also we have a Discord that is rolling now. It's my Discord server, and you can catch more clips. I'll post whatever clips Gavin has, and then my own things just for the fun of it. And also you'll get notifications when we go live. So another way to stay in touch, that is Colino12. My name, an O and 12, and you can find that on Twitch. And there you go. That's it. Yeah. Anything else, Gavin?
No. Tighten up.
Say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.
Goodbye, people. Go Bucks.